All right, buddy, welcome to another episode of State of Los Angeles. I know it's been a minute. Had to apologize for that, but hey, man, we're trying to get through this summer. How you doing, Donald?
Doing fantastic.
Glad to hear it, man. So a lot has been going on since we've last had a session. Where do you want to start off with first, man?
I guess if we're going to piggyback a little bit on the last episode, which I think ended on the USC protest, a lot happened, and that is that those things are long gone. The war's still going on, though, but I last read that both the UC and Cal State clamped down, and now they're like putting rules that there is no demonstrations allowed, and students can't put masks on and stuff. I think it's, for obvious reasons. Obviously, they want to identify the students that are disrupting what the colleges want. So it was interesting because I think when we talked about it last time, it was just like the start of it, and we were like, what's going to happen? And then it ended, right? And then the kids graduated, and now the colleges are just like, we need to prevent this from happening in the future. I guess there were so many things that happened in that time too. Like cops got called and people were arrested and people were charged. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy to see how that came about. But yeah, it's a wild time, but that's kind of like how that ended, or that's how that arc went for colleges and the students. I understand it, but it also didn't stop the war, which I think was supposed to be
I know I have such mixed views on it, I think, especially when I hear a lot of the conversation happening with younger people, right?
Yeah.
About this conflict. And automatically I'm like, okay, so where do you hear about this conflict? And they always had to reference some TikTok story that they saw on their feed.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think, for one, I understand if you have family, friends, if you have roots in these areas, I totally understand why it matters a lot to you. Mm-hmm. But to see the links and the extremes that some young individuals were going to advocate for this issue, I kind of think, is it just because you saw this online? If you didn't have TikTok, would you really care as much?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's something a perspective I have on it, just because on an average everyday basis, I don't really see how that conflict automatically factors into my everyday.
Yeah.
And I think us being adults paying bills with a 9 to 5, if it doesn't impact my gas, my groceries, my everyday, it's something that doesn't really give much real estate or like rental space in your mind,
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. Like, we have to be very forgiving and human. I'm sure people that maybe do a lot of fundraising or do like a 5K to, help alleviate or like to find cures for cancer, find cures for diabetes, find cures for all these types of things that happen, right, in 5Ks or some sort of walk for it or something like that. And I realize like a lot of the people that get really involved in those tend to have a family member, if not themselves, go through it, right?
Yeah.
If there's like a walk for lung cancer, most likely than not, you talk to anybody that's going to sign up for it or actually do it. More often than not, it's someone that's like, yeah, like my uncle died of this, or my aunt has this, or my grandma had that, or whatever. And I think that's just kind of how it is. To your point, yes, it's tough because there are people who have families there or whose backgrounds affect them. But I don't know, at the same time, too, I also think about us and our age and like how we're these elder millennials, and maybe it's because of where we're at in our lives, like we kind of pick and choose what battles we want. And I don't know, I don't really blame like the 18-year-old, 19-year-old who is very, very open. They have way more time. Like their relationship with time is so different than ours that, I think to them doing a protest or something probably isn't as tasking or as demanding of their time as someone who's older and whatnot and has different responsibilities. So that factors in. So I totally get where you're coming from. And yes, like I think I'm in the same boat too with the whole like TikTok news, like street journalist type thing where it can get a little confusing. I totally understand that there are things that are in the world that don't get reported on mainstream news. And I totally understand that. Like that's just, again, it's a whole rabbit hole of how the media is set up and everything. But sometimes there's also like a lot of stuff that happens on TikTok that isn't 100% factual. And I guess this is where like the government, the US government at least, is stepping in and trying to figure that out because they're concerned about misinformation and whatnot. And I don't know, I think it depends on who you are, right? Like it depends on whether you feel that information is something that is true to you or not. Obviously, the most obvious example, right, of a lot of back and forth misinformation stuff that's happening in our country, or the way we kind of see it day to day as citizens of this country, is the upcoming U.S. elections, right? Where you have one candidate on one side, the other candidate on the other side, and they both stand for something and they're both against something. And depending on where you fall in either side, you kind of take some of the stuff that your guy likes as the truth, and what he represents, he or she is saying is right. And then you think that everything the other person is saying is completely wrong. And it doesn't even matter if they're really right or not. It's more about you playing your side. So
yeah,
obviously segueing here into the U.S. elections.
Here we go.
It's been crazy because I don't think we talked about it at all. But I mean, I guess, well, to be honest, we didn't talk about it at all during the iteration of this whole podcast, is because, like, come on, it was Biden versus Trump. And we kind of felt like, is this something worth having a discussion about? Like, you know what I mean? It was just so unmotivating. And now it's not, because, Biden stepped down. Even that in itself is a whole crazy story because, he stepped down, but then there's people say, no, he was asked to leave, So it's like, it depends on who you are, right? And now you have Kamala here going crazy. She's got the whole social media team going on. There's a lot of memes being made, and they're calling her like the meme queen. And, it's crazy.
She took Brad and ran with it.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy. She got the young people riled up.
Yeah.
So now it feels like we got to have a conversation about this whole thing in the elections and what it means for the future of our country, and, just how things have transpired and where they're at. But I don't know. I wanted to get your thoughts on, like, I know it feels like at this point, sure, every podcast and every news outlet you've heard kind of like beating this whole thing of Kamala winning the debate. But as you seen the debate, did you feel anything different than what's already been said or reported? What were your thoughts on just the whole debate in general? Should there be another one?
I hope there's another round, just because it's entertainment gold. I mean, the way Kamala handled the debate was pretty good. I will say, because I'm always trying to watch it with an open mind instead of just being like rah, rah, rah for a given team. Well, let's be honest about it. And yeah, there were times she was asked questions where she just went back to her game plan, her scripted remarks or rebuttals, or like stick to the script, as some would say. So I felt she was doing that a lot. I say maybe like 3 or even 5 times where she was asked a question and she just doubled back, repeating the exact same talking point.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, because I felt that she would have been a little more prepared, because a lot of people were just thinking, well, she schooled Trump. She brought up the rallies.
Yeah.
He took the bait. And I was texting you while it was happening, and like, oh, dude, like, he fell for it, man.
Yeah.
Hook, line, and sinker. Like, she set it up and he like bulldozed it down. And he got played in that regard.
Yeah.
But as well rehearsed and practiced as she was, I didn't like the fact that, again, she gave in to some canned responses. I thought, nah, dude, she should have had an answer for every single thing. Just knock it out the park. Because some people were like, well, that's all she had to do was make Trump look like a fool. And I'm like, dude, that doesn't take anyone's help, bro. Yeah. He just does it on his own. He'll put his foot in his mouth and he'll say something, and then he has to double back. Because the thing with Trump is, it does a lot, is that he speaks without filter. Some people love that because they feel like it's refreshing. While she was like the typical politician, like I said, she had her rehearsed responses. And the thing people like about Trump is the fact that they feel he's a bit more honest because he speaks without filter.
Yeah.
And those are 2 completely different things. I mean, if you speak without filter, there's going to be so many things that would come out of anybody's mouth that they wouldn't back up, that they wouldn't say, yeah, I stand by what I said in that moment. Because it's just what came to mind. It came out.
Yeah.
And then either you didn't like the way it was received, or you didn't like the way it made you feel now that you process what you just said. So Trump doesn't do that. He'll just say what's on his mind, and people feel like that's being candid and being honest. And it's like, well, we have so crazy passing thoughts at any given time. Dude, some thoughts people get charged with some random thought that comes to mind. But what matters is, what do you act on? Not what you say, not what you think, but what do you do?
Yeah.
And that gets lost with a lot of people. So I look at this debate. Yeah, dude, I had a lot of fun. I watched it with my folks. My folks were cheering for Kamala to just continue to put a whooping on Trump.
Yeah, it's true. I know you hit it, especially afterwards, right? In the upcoming rallies, it felt like all the bits I heard in terms of like the sound bites I heard on the news of her rallies was just mainly her replaying all the dunking she did on Trump. And to your point, yeah, like I think there comes a point where you feel like, okay, yes, we get it. It was funny. Like he got baited. He fell for it. Like what a dummy, right? And it's cool. But also like, okay, so where are the policies?
Yeah.
What can we expect once you win? Because a lot of, especially on her side, a lot of the, hey, I want another debate is because it almost comes across like, I'm ready to dunk on this guy again and get more crazy sound bites and stuff. Because yes, that's what happened. I mean, how many memes did you hear about cats and dogs after this debate, right? So,
Oh, bro. Have you seen that video? It's amazing, bro. Cats and dog. And then you see Trump just doing his dance. I'm like, yo, this is wild.
yeah.
Bro, so crazy.
Yeah. People making beats out of them, and they're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. They're eating all the pets.
Oh, man. Petco have a field day, bro. PETA just be marching on his lawn or something.
Bro.
Outside Trump Tower. But that's the thing that pissed me off because I'm like, yo, real talk, the way you beat someone who comes across incompetent, you sound very competent. You sound like, yo, I got it all locked. That's what I thought she was going to do. I was hoping she wouldn't take the petty route and try to make a fool out of him, trying to make him sound dumb. Because a lot of Trump supporters are going to be like, that's what you guys always do.
Yeah.
You guys always try to make us look ridiculous, sound bad for vouching for this guy. When, and again, I remember watching CNN when the debate was going on, and then they had like the little like poll of where they bring like a few people, you know, some left, some right, some independent. And yeah, that's what they said. Like, you know, when it came down to policy, at the end of the day, Trump still ticked specific boxes of certain policy that they want to see happen, right?
You sent me a text about how you read that he had mentioned about not taxing overtime pay.
Yeah, that was afterwards. But yeah, that was wild. I was like, whoa, that's a big one. With expenses becoming so high for people and this whole conversation about whether you continue to raise the minimum wage, which I know if we were to get deep into that, we both have our opinions on that. And again, always some of these solutions that people present can create more problems because you're not really thinking through what the real issue is. I mean, raising minimum wage, I'm like, bro, like what's a minimum wage job? Like, you know, being the person taking orders at a drive-through, I'm like, what, this person should be making, what, 20 an hour? Is that what you're saying? Someone who barely doesn't even have, maybe, I don't even know if you need a GED to work at McDonald's these days and stuff like that. It's like, the reason why we have minimum wage is because that's a stepping stone to having a better career, to having a higher paying job. I mean, that's what you're supposed to pay your rent with. That's what you're supposed to be very much independent. I mean, when I think minimum wage job, I think you're still living with your folks.
Yeah.
I think you have roommates, you know. I don't think you're out on your own, Mr. Independent, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge socioeconomic conversation about pay, you know, especially like for retail workers. It's there's a lot of factors, obviously. Yeah, to your point, yes, like the minimum wage means it's almost like saying like you're living the minimum life. And I think like, yes, like should people have more ambition and have more going on for themselves? Yeah, I think that that's really important. And I think that, I mean, the person has to want to have drive for themselves to want to get out of that and get out of like this kind of like making more than minimum thing. But it's always tough. But yeah, I think from what I've seen, it feels like anytime minimum wage goes up, which we've already seen it go up a little bit.
Yeah.
Everything else just goes up with it. I think for as much as I want to say, or I want to believe we can live in a world where if someone were to make 20 an hour on minimum, it means that gas stays at like $3 a gallon or $4 a gallon. It'd be nice, at least, but it's not. Like if someone were to do that on the minimum, then gas is definitely going up $6, $7, $8 a gallon. Rent's going to go up. Groceries are going to go up. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately, we do live in a capitalistic society. And I don't mean it as in like I hate capitalism, because I do benefit from it as well. But the thing is with capitalism is that like when someone knows you can afford more, then they charge you more. That's just how that works. Like it's like an unspoken automatic thing that happens, especially in our country, right? It's just an unspoken. It's like we all have a value. We all have our worth. You know what I mean? We all do a job that we get paid X amount. You know, you might get like, I don't know, 10,000 for your first project. And then you do good. And then the project does well. And then you're thinking, okay, my next one, I would want to make 12. So that's going to be my offer, 12. And then you get paid 12. And then you're thinking like, oh, wow, they can afford 12. And then you're thinking, all right, about 15. And then you go up and up. And it's like you basically negotiate, right? And that's a big part of our world. Like we negotiate back and forth. It's like when you go and get a car at a dealership, it's you negotiating with them. Like, oh, they say it's 20,000 for the car. You say, hey, how about 15,000? Would you let it go for 15? They're like, oh, no. What about 19? We'll let it go for you for 19. I don't really have 19. How about 16? And then you can do that. It's a lot of back and
Yeah.
forth, kind of pulling and fighting, and it's just tough because I do get that not everyone has those skill sets to do that. So you do have a cohort of people, a group of people, like they're not going to fight for their pay. So we got to go out there and fight for them. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. But I do think that it's tough. There's just so many variables that come into it because,
Yeah.
yeah, like especially for us living in LA, man, like it just keeps going up and up. And it's just
Yeah.
really tough because everybody wants to live here, and I get it. It's amazing weather. The city's it's getting busier, obviously. Traffic's like not cool, but like for the most people love living in this city and it's tough to break away from it. And I think that, I don't know, sometimes this is where I feel like governments need to do more in terms of like figuring out how to make other cities be hot spots and dope places to live at,
Yeah.
because it shouldn't just be LA and New York or Miami. Anywhere you go should be pretty cool. Like it should work for you. And I think that also plays a factor, especially for us here in Los Angeles, like
Mhm.
that everybody who does want to live here. And developers do buy properties and make a lot of money out of it. They make way more than they would have made if they bought the same property in like
Mhm.
Idaho or something. It's just like a lot of that stuff plays into it, So it's just really crazy. And it'd be nice to, going back to the conversation about the elections, it'd be nice to have candidates that want to talk about these kind of things, instead of having one candidate that wants to only dunk on the other one, and then the other one completely keeps shooting himself in the foot all the time. So it's like, you know what I mean? It just sucks to think that this is kind of what we have to look forward to. I mean, it was just kind of fun to see the change happen with Biden, but also it's kind of like, man, something more for sure to look forward to. But I think a lot of people, I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
I was going to ask you this too as a follow up. Did you think this changed anyone's mind, the debate? Do you think anybody that was pro Harris was like now like, I don't, Trump now is making a lot of sense to me? Or do you think anybody else pro Trump being like, oh man, that Kamala, she really, she really made me think differently? Yeah.
And the reason why they're in the middle is because I would argue that they're people who really think it through, right? I
Yeah.
think people who are hardline on the left or the right, they're not really thinking that deep about their decision. There's like, this is my party, or these are the things I care about the most. Oh, this is the candidate who's advocating for those things. Done. It's very cut and dry, very simple. It's like they're very much caught up in like, yo, I got other things, man. I got cat videos to like. I got other things I'd rather be doing than figuring out the very like intricate nuances of what makes them actually different from each other, other than just what the party defines. Because Trump is kind of odd too, because he's not really a hardline Republican,
Yeah.
He just joined that ticket. I think that's something a lot of people forget. He was buddy with the Clintons for a long time.
Yeah.
He would have been a Democrat, but he ran Republican because he's like, yo, the Democrats won't vote for me. I think with where I stand, with how I move and how I come across, I think the Republican crowd would like me better. That's why he ran for the Republican ticket. It's not that he really cares about all the things that Republicans advocate for. It's just that, and he's a showman too. And we saw it during his term, during his presidency. He leaned more towards what was going to get people excited and happy about having him as president. He's like, oh, you guys want this? You guys want more stimulus checks? Cool, let me cut them. The Democrats were supporting those stimulus checks, especially when they were going past the first round. Republicans were like, stop this. Like, we don't want to do this anymore. This is going to hurt, because they want to cut down government spending. Well, in some areas, not in others. But that was one thing where they thought like, no, you can't just keep printing money and cutting these checks. And he's like, I don't care. It's like, the people are all about it. I'm going to do what the people want. That's just a lot of what he did, to just stay in the positive light for the public. He loves adoration. He loves people chanting his name, giving him praise. I think, and we could get into that about the picture that Democrats paint of Trump. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's what he likes, man. I don't think he's really about what some of them say he is about, but I think the way he moves and the fact that he doesn't want to be challenged on those things shakes up democracy in a way. And it's almost like checking the rules and almost seeing, can we maybe rewrite the rules just so that he has an easier time of things. just so that he's not getting the pushback, because that's what I think he hates the most. And it isn't because he wants to stay there forever. He just wants to cruise in his job.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, man, one guy who definitely does not like Trump. And this is another segue here. It's one of our favorite rappers.
Oh, snap. Here we go.
Mr. Marshall Mathers. We know he's had some few choice words for him, especially when he first won that term. You know, since then, he stayed quiet. Just recently this year, he rolled out an album. And I don't know about you, man, but I felt like that rollout, okay, this is going to be a good album, because I've never seen him be this involved in so much promo, so much video, so much anticipation to it. I don't think, when he did all the other stuff like Revival and them, I feel like they just kind of came out and he did like an interview here and there, and then that was that.
Yeah.
Even with like Music to Be Murdered By. But Death of Slim Shady, man, I bought the album twice. Friggin' Universal Records got me buying the album twice, which for anyone who doesn't know, when you buy the album because there's like a bonus track, like you get the full album again 2 times, which is unnecessary. So I had to consolidate those 2 bonus tracks into the one album that I needed for my iTunes. And then it sucked afterwards because he released the album like another 2 times, one with an extra 3rd bonus track. And then this latest one that came out, which was the Mourner's Edition or something, where like the artwork now is the body bag in the morgue thing. And I just thought it was crazy because I was like, man, I'm not buying this album 2 more times, dude. So this is so dope. It's like $12 a pop, man. They got like $24 out of me. But anyways, man, I know you and I were really excited for that album. What were your thoughts on this Eminem album when you heard it?
I thought it was funny, dude. I thought it was great. I like how he always has to clap back, because man, he's like in his 50s now, bro. And he's still cranking out music. He's still being competitive with new up-and-coming artists that are a big deal. One of our favorite tracks on the album also got a remix, Fuel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Fuel, the Fuel remix. That was on the last one that came out. Yeah.
So I went ahead and just bought that single. I'm like, I already got all the other tracks.
They weren't going to get you, man.
I know, dude. I just get the one single. He did a great job. He's changed over the years, man.
Yeah.
Of course, that was a big thing when he talked about the fact that he OD'd. Yeah. Since then, he had been on a road recovery. He has had like over a decade of sobriety since then.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, he said he had to relearn how to rap.
Yeah.
So his style and approach to music changed. But the funny thing, too, is you can tell how he's trying to keep it interesting for himself,
Yeah.
He's gone through this whole thing of how many like double, triple, even some of his tracks, he'll have a quadruple entendre where it's like, how do you make one word mean so many different things? And so he'll have this elaborate setup and then an easy, quick double meaning that you can figure out. And then he'll say something later on. And then you're like, oh, now that word that had 1, not 2, but 3 meanings now has 4. So it's a crazy setup. But it's almost like he's doing all these lyrical gymnastics.
Yeah, that's his thing, man.
His lyrical miracles, as some of his critics would call him.
The latest line was the P. Diddy line.
That was wild. For anyone following, so much has been going on. That's still developing. So I don't even know how much we could say about that situation.
Yeah.
But the Diddy line, he didn't spell rapper without leaving the P. Diddy. Crazy.
That was wild, man.
I love watching YouTube reactions because everyone's face hear like that hamster in the wheel start to spin. It's like the hamster's like, oh, I better get to work. And he jumps in the wheel and starts spinning. And then you see that light bulb go off in their head where they're like, oh, he just said something right there. And they have to replay that probably like 2-3 times because it hit so hard. And you're like, that was such a clever, crazy setup. And even with the Fuel remix, he hasn't taken his foot off the gas when it comes to coming at Diddy at all.
No, man. That was just crazy. Yeah, dude. I mean, there's so much in this album that was so good. Obviously, the lyrical wordplay is top notch. That's just his thing. He makes it look easy. It just makes you realize like this is a guy who really, really loves rap music and really loves poetry, loves this whole idea of rhyming words together. Like he is like a walking dictionary in terms of just knowing what words go with what word and putting full sentences and telling you a story. I thought the album was great. I love the story overall, like the whole Death of Slim Shady concept. Like I loved how that played out throughout the album. I know there was a tweet that he put out on X where he said, you got to listen to the album in its order in order to understand it, because there is a story being told. And the story is obviously that, his alter ego, Slim Shady, kind of takes over for a bit, which is kind of like the big part of the first half of the album. And then he overcomes Slim Shady at the end, which finally gives the Kura, which is what the title of the album is.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives the final blow, and it's supposed to signify the death of Slim Shady, at least. I think as far as the storytelling, I think it did a really good job in that. I think that this felt like he probably wanted to put to rest this whole idea that like the way he rapped or the way he started rapping in the Slim Shady alter ego obviously is not who he really is as a person, but that Slim Shady does say a lot of these offensive things, right?
Yeah.
And that sometimes Slim Shady comes out and does things that, like, I think he says a lot of things that a lot of people are thinking. Sometimes that is needed to kind of just hear, like, yeah, I'm glad I'm not alone in that, you know?
Yeah, I think that's why artists like that, people pedestalize a lot because they go out and say the things that they're thinking.
Yeah.
And they know that they shouldn't say out loud because it's going to be all this fallout, all these repercussions for it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that's just how you feel and think in a moment.
Yeah.
But is that something you want to act on and do and kind of really go down that rabbit hole? Not really. But it's just sometimes you see a vent. And that's why I think something like Eminem, it's funny because growing up, I wasn't really a fan of him because I saw the Slim Shady persona. I saw how offensive and everyone was getting riled up and protesting and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought of it like, well, this is someone just trying to get attention, just trying to create discourse, just to kind of build a name for himself. So I was a really big fan of him then. But funny enough, I came onto him during recovery and on. That's after he relapsed and OD'd. And then he had to turn his whole life around.
Yeah.
And something about the music he was making then struck a nerve. Of course, that's around the time when he made his biggest pop hits with Rihanna and everything.
Yeah.
And then, of course, later on, and Marshall Mathers LP2 is when he dropped Rap God, which became something that every up-and-coming rapper wants to see if they could rap that just as fast and, and just go pop off like that.
Yeah.
But there was an appreciation over time of his longevity, of his work ethic, of the passion and drive came through, especially like we mentioned earlier, like he's like almost mid-50s now.
Yeah.
And still going strong because there's a love and passion for what he does. Us, you know, getting closer to like our 40s, that paints a different picture and different light of us being a creative space, still wanting to do things that we feel would challenge or inspire younger artists to be like, yo, I like what they're doing there.
Yeah.
Let's spin that into something. So
yeah. What were your thoughts on the way the singles came out? Because he came out with Houdini, and I think anybody that heard Houdini sounds like a very Without Me, kind of like the typical Eminem pop first single. They get some radio play, but then 2 months later, we get Toby, right?
Right.
And Toby is kind of a little bit more aggressive, a darker song in terms of like the tone sounds darker. It's like a trap beat, you know, you got Big Sean in it. And then obviously at the end of July was the sad song, right? Somebody Save Me. What were your thoughts on just how he rolled out those singles? Because I feel like, I don't know if that played a bigger part in the whole overall anticipation for the album.
Very smart. I mean, to bring back something that sounds very similar, very nostalgic, very much everyone had the same reaction because I love watching reaction videos. They're very fun to see people just get lit and excited about stuff that you're excited about. And yeah, everyone had that whole thing of like, oh, there's that, and then there's this, and there's this reference and that reference. And it's so much of referring back to what people kept harping on the last few years. Like, oh, we kind of wish we could get back how Eminem used to be, the old Eminem. If there was a way to bring that back. And Eminem's like, I got you. We got AI. I could augment my voice. And the fact that he was even able to recreate the same flow pattern that he used to do, because he raps different now.
Yeah.
But it's intentional, you know, because again, he wants to make things interesting for himself. So it's to show that, hey, I could make it simple. You can follow everything. I'm not doing some crazy fast rapping, nothing, no crazy metaphors or entendres. It's a very straightforward track.
Yeah.
Which the radio didn't want to play right away. I mean, that's something with Eminem. It's like almost radio and like mass media got like tired of hearing him.
Yeah.
Played for so long that they tried to hold him off of being on the radio. But then I guess all the radio calls, all the demands.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 weeks after the single came out is when it finally got radio play.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't deny that the single it was fire. And then Toby came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Toby's like, oh, this reminds you, you know, I like the crazy Jason and Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
You know, he likes to reference and tap into that bag. And that's what you got with Toby. Of course, reconnecting with Cole Bennett for the video.
Yeah.
Lyrical Lemonade. Of course, the video was crazy. The track was dope. Yeah, Baby Tron and Big Sean feature on the track. So you got some Detroit locals, which is a big thing because Big Sean was established.
Yeah.
But yeah, Baby Tron coming up in the last few years. So it's to highlight like, hey man, here's like a micro 3 generations Detroit rappers
Yeah.
right here. Eminem came first, then Big Sean, and then Baby Tron. So it's a way of extending to say like, hey man, I'm about being generational. I'm not being about just to his stance.
Yeah, exactly. Like he has an easier out for like the future talent. And all that. And it's really dope. I like seeing that, man. I thought that was super dope to see Detroit be put on the map for once in a long time, you know?
Of course, he got the closing out, which I don't think, maybe the Fuel remix he'll do, because we all want a Fuel single to come out.
I know, we kept talking about how that's one of the ones that should have been a music video.
But Somebody Save Me makes sense, you know, because Jelly Roll killing it right now.
Yeah.
Much beloved new artist that's come on the scene in the past year.
Yeah.
And he loved the song, and he's known for that. That's what Stan featured, right? That remix from Dido.
Yeah.
So to have a big single and then him to kind of, in a sense, remix it and make it his own is something Eminem's done in the past. But it's also a big thing for him since his daughter just recently got married.
Yeah.
Haley, always shouted out in a lot of his old work.
Yeah.
So it felt like a nice like closing of the chapter. Now that she's married, he's not like the main man in her life. He can now kind of take a step back. And that was a whole reflective track of if he didn't change after he had OD'd.
Yeah.
If he had, I don't know if he had survived and kept going down dark path, or if he didn't come back afterwards, but him just kind of having that reflective song to look back and to kind of be, even though it was sad, also in a sense being grateful. Like, I'm glad I got to witness all these things that he mentions in the song. He's glad to be there for the guitar recital, for graduation, for all these things that he would have missed out on if he didn't get his life together. So that's typical Eminem, you know, always trying to find an inspirational track to put out there.
Yeah.
As much as he's been Mr. Controversial majority of his career, he likes to lay down the fact like, no, I do care.
Yeah.
I play it up for the camera. I'm playing a character. I put on an act.
Yeah.
But he always has serious tracks where he's being like, this is what I really care about.
Yeah.
And this is what I want people at the end of the day to walk away with. And of course, those tend to be the deeper cuts that the fans are really aware of. But people who just know his name in passing would say like, oh, that guy, like, oh, you know, and then they kind of get all worked up because they don't know his full body of work. They just know thing that's very entertaining.
Yeah.
But like even he did in his little mock interview he did with himself. That I think it was with Complex, right?
Yeah, it was a Complex release, yeah.
Yeah, where he highlights the fact that like, dude, this Slim Shady is basically a South Park character. And no one hates on South Park for being what it is.
Yeah.
But it's because it's different when it's cartoon. You're completely separate from it. You know it's not real. As opposed to an actual person, you know, putting on that role, putting on that character. Sometimes people don't see the fact that it's a performance, that it's an act.
For sure, man. Yeah, no, obviously, really good album. If you're a rap fan, if you're an Eminem fan, it definitely feels like it's been a while since he did something like this. Great concept, amazing storytelling. I felt like, you know, it kind of encapsulated a lot of his career work in terms of the fun tracks like Houdini, Toby, like the super dope lyrical stuff. You know, a lot of the other songs that he has on there were really good. But overall, I liked it. Fuel obviously is like a fan of Mike's and I's, you know, with Jid. I think him and Jid did a really great job. I would even mind if the music video was the Jid and the new one with the Shady guys on it as well. I think it'd be really great.
That would be sick to just do like a huge music video and just do from one song to the other. That'd be sick. It should be.
It should be. Yeah, that'd be really, really dope.
That'd be fire.
But yeah, man. Death of Slim Shady, super dope album. Obviously, moving on to more music talk is probably the final thing we talk about, and that's because it's close to us in terms of our area, our geography, and that is that Linkin Park is back.
Yeah.
I believe you're the one that told me that Linkin Park. I don't know if you told me not my LP when you saw Emily come out, but there's a lot of back and forth on the internet about how people feel about the revamped Linkin Park. I'm open and I'm all for it, but it is funny seeing like people being really worked up about it, you know. But what are your thoughts, Mike, on just this whole thing? I remember you showed me Shinoda had like a kind of secret release thing with the countdown, and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a live concert, right? If I'm not mistaken, at the Kira Forum. I didn't watch it. I only saw some of the clips after the fact. But what are your thoughts on this new version of Linkin Park?
Yeah, so the rollout was wild, right? We started with that countdown and everyone's wondering like, what's going on? Everyone thought it was going to be an announcement of like the Minutes to Midnight special collection, because they did one for Hybrid Theory. They did one for Meteora. So they've just figured, oh, they're just going to do that again.
Yeah.
They're just going to put out another collection, another unreleased song or two attached to the project. And that's all it was going to be.
Yeah.
But then people were shocked when there was a post from, I think it was Phoenix, the bass player, who put out a post highlighting to the fans, hey, be sure to check your email if you're an LPU member, Linkin Park Underground member. And sure enough, people were receiving these emails saying like, hey, respond if you want a ticket to attend this event. So fans were just clamoring like oh snap, like, are they going to just debut something? Is it going to be like a type of meet and greet and just make like an announcement to a group of fans?
Yeah.
And then people were shocked when they walked in and saw the setup and they're like, whoa, this is a whole stage here.
Yeah.
You know? And then they proceeded to perform a 1 hour set, starting off with their brand new single to open out the show.
Yeah.
And people were just rabid, man. They just didn't know what to think, what to feel, knowing that they were finally going to come back out with a new female lead singer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Chester Bennington, who tragically passed away, I believe it's 7 years ago.
Yeah, 7 years ago. Yeah.
And it hit hard, you know, because Linkin Park was one of those bands that was revolutionary when they came out, had the biggest album of the 2000s.
Yeah.
And there was talk of, are they manufactured? Is this real? Are they genuine? Like, how can someone come out with such an explosive sound and make such an impact? And they just did, you know?
Yeah.
With the rap vocals from Mike Shinoda and singing vocals from Chester, where it was different. As a band, they got signed because of Chester. They were shopping around because Mike had they started a band with this bunch of high school buddies, and then his very first group where Brad was part of it, the guitarist. Then he went to college, he met Han, and then Brad, he went to another college. That's where he met, I think that's where he met Rob and Phoenix, I believe, or Phoenix first and then Rob later on. But then they had a singer, but no one would sign him. It was Chester.
Yeah.
When they were holding auditions, Chester came in, he sang the part, and the next thing you know, they shopped around, and eventually they finally got signed because of Chester was a unique voice in the industry. He stood out, and a lot of people had this feeling of, well, he kind of makes the band then. Because without him, the band wouldn't have been signed. They wouldn't have blown up to be what they were. So how could you continue without that lead singer, without those vocals? And that's why it was very divisive when she made her debut, Emily Armstrong. People didn't know what to think of it.
Yeah.
I know me and my buddies, we were texting each other. There was so much bashing, so much of like, this doesn't sound the same. That doesn't sound the same. This doesn't feel right. People just didn't know how to feel about it because it's just new and different. And I know a lot of the guys I was chatting with, they would always go to the concert. So I always talked to them about potential LP reunion of any sort. And I remember they were thinking, we'll see what the new stuff sounds like.
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't. It took like a full week for me, at least, to separate how those old songs sounded with Chester versus how they sound now with Emily. And yeah, when they made that debut of, hey, we got a new single, new music video, new album, dropping November 15th. They have a new mini tour of 6 days. Of course, the first day, again, still in LA.
Yeah.
And then they had one in New York, and they just had one in Belgium where they just debuted another new song, which sounds awesome.
Yeah, you were telling me about this.
Yeah, the new song was finally that new that I wanted, because the first single, they busted a Minutes to Midnight.
Yeah.
Where they put out a song that sounded familiar. It had a lot of the elements and pieces of what you expect a Linkin Park song to sound like. You know, you had some scratching from Mr. Han. You had a similar guitar riff progressions that you would hear in other song element. You had some like digital distortion, but it was cleverly done where Mike sings. Because, you know, over the years, Mike did some vocal training. He wanted some backup vocals as well. So he starts singing in the beginning. He does like the first verse, and then Emily comes in the second verse. And even for the hook, it's just heavy guitar riffs. There's no singing for the first chorus, which I give Mike credit for being able to do that, being able to manufacture a track for the sole purpose of this song is designed to introduce you to the new singer.
Yeah.
And of course, we see that as the second track on the album versus a musical intro. And then that's the first actual song on the new project.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. As you can tell, I'm an avid LP fan. Very well versed in all of this.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, Emily is a big deal, man. And the new song finally gave us that newness I wanted to hear. I want to hear, okay, with the new singer, with the new 7 years coming back, what is their new sound going to be? Because they made a conscious effort since Minutes to Midnight. Every album needs to have a new sound.
Yeah.
It needs to have a new direction. And that's why they lost a lot of fans over the years, because they kept changing things up, trying to evolve and grow what they do.
Yeah.
And that's why the fans they have now are very much equivalent to stands that Eminem has, because these are fans that rode with them throughout the decade, or over a decade, through a variety of different sounds and reinvention. So coming to this project, I wasn't that worried, because I knew they were going to reinvent themselves again. And Heavy as the Crown is the first track where it's like, okay, this is the new sound. This is the new direction. This is them, again, diving into the bag of rock and trying to find a new type of rock sound to have. But at the same time, you have Mike rapping on every verse, which is what we want. More than anything is for Mike to be rapping and then the singer to just bring it and just like kill it in the chorus with powerful vocals and, you know, a little bit of screaming, but with rhythm and a flow to it. And I think that lends the ear to Mike being a hip hop head, where there's always a rhythm and beat and flow to the production. Because that's how they used to work. They used to do the beat first. And then, okay, what vocals do we think fits this melody, you know?
Yeah. And the new song that you're talking about is the one that you heard online, right? That it's not a single that's out yet on streaming.
On the 6-city tour, they're doing now a 2-hour set. There's these great recordings that you can find of fans putting up a full recording of the 2 hours up on their YouTube channel. And people have clipped the new single that you can check out, Heavy as the Crown. It sounded great live, and I really can't wait to hear what the studio version sounds like.
So right now we can only hear it on like someone's phone recording.
But yeah, I got to get to these new iPhones, man. Pretty clear. So it's pretty good.
The new iPhone 16 Pro got crystal clear recording capabilities.
Yeah, again, we're not sponsored by Apple, but just letting you guys know. You can't mess with Apple, bro.
Yeah, and they're going to replace us now, dude. I saw that new cinematic feature for the audio, which is like, oh yeah, we're just going to fully make it like you took it to an editor, but like, you know, with the flip of a button.
The press event yet.
Yeah.
I just saw the text that you sent me. And I'm like, okay, there's going to be some feature that's automated that Donald's really freaking out about. I'm like, it's either going to be something related to audio or he thinks they're going to come at me and the graphics department. And they came at both of us.
Yeah, dude.
Where if there's a photo where you like the lighting, you could click that photo and then select another photo and say, copy the lighting of this other photo. And it'll try to match the shadows, try to match the highlights. It'll try to create the same type of mood and color balancing. I'm like, that's wild. And then with the audio, the fact that you can choose, oh, what do I want this to sound like? Do I want it to sound like a TV show or a movie? Or you have a wide range of presets where it'll do all of its magic behind the scenes and just kind of try to dial in the audio. And of course, this is more amateur hour stuff. You know, we're talking very tech at the moment. When it really comes down to it, when you do this stuff at a high level, you want the creative control. Believe me, I've had this experience where they like to hover over your shoulder and really kind of nitpick and point, like tweak this, tweak that.
Yeah.
They love to really get in there and mess with things. So as much as Apple's trying to say like, hey, right off the bat, it just does it all for you easily, it's more so, I think, on the beginner side of things or the indie side of things where you don't have much money. You can't afford to be paying all these people to do everything they want to do. You don't feel comfortable sending everything out to India. And you want to do it all in-house or most of it yourself. So it gives you the opportunity as a director, which I feel like a lot of the stuff that's been going on with AI and their arguments is to give director more power, more control to complete their vision.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they overlook guys like you and me where we're helping you create that vision though. It's like, yeah, but what if I just don't need you and it could just be all about me? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying because, like, you heard this new Linkin Park song, you're going to send me the link. And apparently, like, someone recorded it on their phone from what I could tell. Yeah. So it'd just be crazy to think that you go to a concert, right? And you record this artist, and then you could just hit that Apple audio cleanup button, and it'll probably make it sound like it's the studio version. Like, imagine that could happen. Yeah. That'd be insane. I mean, that would be really messed up. But also, it's kind of like, damn, like, I mean, at the same time, too, like these tech companies will do whatever, right? At this point, like they're just trying to sell a phone. So,
yeah. And that's why like copyright protection is going to be super important moving forward in these AI conversations.
I mean, I'm looking forward to the future industry talks that you're going to have at State of the Industry because I have been seeing a lot of the conversations. I've been seeing the strikes happening even amongst like the video game people and all that. And I think that all plays into it. It's like all these things that are a bigger part of the overall what's happening with the entertainment industry as a whole. So,
I mean, maybe that's why they're trying so hard to raise the minimum wage because, you know, we're all going to be flipping burgers. You know, there's going to be no more creative jobs. There's going to be no more jobs that are very specialized. You know, it's going to be like, what can everyone do assembly line style?
Yeah.
which isn't really where things are headed. So it's kind of weird.
It's all this automation happening wrong. Yeah, that's true.
That these are in conflict. And of course, like you mentioned, it's going to be a huge conversation we're going to have on state of the industry about AI. I'm already lining up some guys who they tell me this is all they talk about, like water cooler talk, like every single day at the studio, is they can't help but talk about AI.
Yeah, man.
So I'm going to bring on some great guests to talk about AI that people who follow the channel, they're going to recognize some names. And yeah, man, we might even have Donald hop over, switch teams, and
yeah,
get into the AI conversation. It's a big thing that affects everybody. It's not something that only affects one industry either. It affects everything, which is why I'm wondering why things are being handled so carelessly. And we're going to get into some examples. You're going to be shocked at how careless people are with the development of this AI technology. And it's a tool, but it's got to be controlled and reined in. This whole, you just open Pandora's box and just start closing it conversation. I'm like, dude, you can, and that's a whole thing that I'm not going to get into, but you can still tune in, but you can still
don't give it away.
No, all I'm going to say is that you can still manage it though. There still needs to always be rules and structure to things. To me, it's you're just broadening the scope, but you still need to know where things fit and how and where things lie. Look the other way. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Let the machine learn.
It'll figure it out on its own.
Oh man. Well, that's a good spot to end this pod. I don't know about you, but I'm also getting hungry too, so I want to grab dinner. Thank you guys for tuning in and hope you enjoyed this conversation. Be sure to follow us on socials, X, Instagram, Facebook, I believe we're on as well. I can correct.
Yeah, we got it all, man. At STIDLA176.
Yep. And then also follow us on the pod feeds, YouTube, follow the YouTube channel, follow us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to us. But if you don't have a podcast platform to listen to us, you can always catch it on YouTube. Everybody has YouTube. Like you don't have to ask them to subscribe. It's just like literally like everyone just has YouTube. So you can send anyone a YouTube link and people will check out that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that with TikTok. Some people are like, I don't have TikTok. And then you just feel like, okay, never mind. I can't show you this meme then. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys for everything. And we'll see you guys soon. We'll see when we get together and do another episode.
Yeah. Until next time, guys. Take care.
Later.
Peace.